Welcome to the Job Fair, where we give job seekers and employers the space to tell their own stories and bring our listeners along for the ride. We're your hosts, Doug and Shauna. Let's dive into it. And we're back. Welcome, everyone, back to the Job Fair, Season 2.
Welcome, everyone. Season 2 is here, and we're back with our first guest episode.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And today, we're excited to welcome the amazing and talented Asia to our virtual set. Asia's a fellow New Yorker. What up? What up, homie?
Let me not sit here and try to claim being a New Yorker, but sure.
Cool. We're really excited to have you join us today, Asia, and learn about your professional journey and your trials and tribulations through this crazy job market. But before we get into what's in store for the rest of your career and what you have going on, we play a fun little game here that Shauna can lay out for us.
It's called Agree to Disagree. I'm sure you heard of it if you've watched season 1. But as a reminder, we like to have a little fun before diving into the nitty-gritty of every episode. It's super simple. Each person will ask a question and we'll all answer either strongly agree, strongly disagree, or disagree, along with just a short reason why. And this is the first one for season 2. Excited to kick things off. If you're all both ready to play.
Yeah, let's go.
Let's do it.
All right. First one. I think it's a softball, but streaming platforms have made traditional movie theaters obsolete.
I feel like there's some truth to this, but I haven't gone to a movie theater that often. I feel like there's truth to it because it's my experience that I don't really go. But at the same time, because I don't go, I don't see how many people are showing up to the movie theater. I will say, though, I seem to only go for Marvel films.
Okay.
Like the stuff that really intended for theater experience.
Okay. I'm going to disagree with this statement. I think that the value of an in-person experience, music, movies, what have you, it can't ever become obsolete. Not fully. We still human beings, whether we living in AI or whatever. There's always going to be a need for people to go and feel and see and smell in the flesh. I think something interesting that recently happened that I saw was that I think Sony Pictures purchased that movie chain Alamo, with they have the dine-in and the drinks and stuff. So I think that's really interesting to see how they play that. And I'm going to disagree with this statement. I think that even when economically it looks down, there's always a market for live experiences.
Okay. No shock here, but I disagree with you, Doug, and I agree with Asia. That experience in person is going to cost you $50. The ticket itself these days, the concessions, ridiculous. No, I think streaming platforms, I can be on my couch in my pajamas. I definitely think that there are areas where movie theaters are still necessary, like for awards, you can't get an Oscar or things like that nominated if you aren't in one of the major cities for a certain amount of time. So I get that. I also think Marvel movies, great example of you need that in-person experience. So I would agree with that, but that's not going to keep them alive either. No, I agree with this one. Sorry, Doug.
All right. We'll screw y'all then. Okay.
I think it's unfortunate, but I would like to go to the movies more often if I'm being completely honest. But it's true that I don't, and I think a lot of people don't as much now.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, definitely. All right. I'm up next. Job hopping every 2 years is the best way to advance your career.
Ooh, job hopping every 2 years. Oh my gosh. I'm going to say I slightly disagree. And I say slightly disagree because I do think if you're in a job for a long time and they're not advancing you, then job hopping is your option, right? And if that's been your experience for years with, I've been in a job for 2 years. Okay, they're not moving me up. I need to move somewhere else. Then I understand if you start going at that pace where you're like, every couple of years, I'm going to find something new. But I do ideally feel like someone wants to be in a place for a while. I feel like jobs in general don't want to have a high turnover, even though sometimes they don't treat people like they don't want a high turnover. So it's like there's a lot of stress that goes into job search and looking for something new. So I'll slightly disagree, but I do think that there are some advantages to doing job hopping. So.
Okay. So I think I'm gonna. Doug never lets me take a middle, so I would have to probably say that I slightly disagree as well. Coming from an HR perspective, if you don't have a year there, it definitely doesn't look good. 2 years, I think, it is reasonable. However, did you all hear Elliot Hill of Nike started as an intern, and starting this year he became CEO of Nike? So when you talk about job hopping and that advancement, I also wonder if that only works for companies that are in growth. I don't know if you can do that nowadays, where 2 years is enough to keep pushing up, especially with the way the job market is and layoffs. So I'm going to slightly disagree as well here.
Right. So I am going to join you all. I can't believe this after y'all bashed me and teamed up against me last time.
Yay! A win for the day.
But my outlook on it is, unless this strategy, this job hopping strategy, it works for people who are rock stars. It works very well for people who are like really amazing and high value at what they do. Unfortunately, that's not the majority of people. Like the average person jumping around can be very risky. And I came up in an era where it was more frowned upon and less accepted than it is now. I think that I'm just seeing a lot of more legacy companies. They want somebody who everybody else wants. It's almost like dating. It's, look, you get a lot of girls, look, you're going to attract more or whatever, or what have you. We probably got to edit that out, Shauna, because we can't talk. That is
no, we're going to keep going. We're going to keep going here.
Okay. But yeah, so I am going to be with you all, and I slightly disagree.
Can I disagree with you, though, really quickly? Because I disagree with what you said about you have to be a rock star to do that promotion, because I think it comes down to, similar to what I said before, like right place, right time. I don't think you have to be a rock star, but if the company is in growth mode and you're the only one who's led, I don't know, analytics or something, I think that puts you in the right position, that I don't think you necessarily have to be a rock star to move up. Just doing my duty to disagree with you, Doug.
I agree with what you just said too, Shauna. But I was thinking about it, and I think that it's harder to find something lateral or moving up if you're job hopping a lot. Because in my experience, I've taken pay cuts finding a new job or something like that. Just because it was pitched to me that I could grow in that job, even though that wasn't necessarily the case. It didn't end up being that way, but
these job hoppers, they treat jobs like consulting gigs. The successful ones. You go somewhere, let's say you're the product manager for ChatGPT, you launch ChatGPT. Now you can go on and do something else. Go over to Google, launch Google Gemini. That's how the job hop is. But you have to be impactful in that 2 years, though. And that's what I meant by like high value.
Yeah, but that's extremely rare. If somebody is like...
Yeah, and let's be real. Saying you launched something like that, you did not launch that. That was a team of 100.
Cool.
All right. I have one. Let's see. Work-life balance is more important than a high salary.
Ooh, good one.
I'm going to disagree.
Ooh, about the money. Okay.
Let me
money over time.
Run me my bag. Like, nothing is free. Nothing has ever been free, but now in this economy more than ever, people want the most out of what they're paying for. And I think that the illusion or the idea of work-life balance is becoming more and more of an illusion, especially with people who work remotely in any capacity, whether it's fully remote or hybrid. They're going to want more out of you. So I disagree.
Okay. No shock here. I disagree with you. I agree with this statement. Again, I know I do this so often. It depends on everyone's situation. So for me, work-life balance is very important, more than a high salary. Now, again, that depends on where you are financially, what your responsibilities are, all of that. I think that this question has a little grain of salt.
I think I do agree with the statement overall as well, and it does depend. I say that because I think having a good salary, maybe not the highest salary, but a good salary where your income is growing, maybe from a previous job, and you're getting what you're worth as far as the role, is a part of a work-life balance. I don't really necessarily separate the two, because ideally a job would include that. Because otherwise, I feel like if I'm not making a high enough salary, I feel like I want to go harder in the job even if they don't deserve it. Then that's imbalance.
Cool. Cool. Yeah, definitely a personal subject here, but awesome round, everyone. Agree to disagree. What a way to kick off this episode with you, Asia. All right, let's get down to it. Asia, we excited to learn more about you and hear your story. So I'm gonna pass the ball back over to you and let you just give us your elevator pitch.
My name is Asia, like the continent. I like to say that I'm an artist cosplaying as a content creator because professionally I've been producing content for over 10 years. Producer, editor, camera operator, director, all of the above when it comes to digital media, and been working for digital media companies all along the way. But at the end of the day, I'm all about the visuals and the storytelling and the visual storytelling. So that's why I say I'm an artist cosplaying as a content creator.
I see. Amazing. Yeah, that's definitely it's an emerging space that wasn't where it is 10 years ago. And I know there's probably a lot of growing pains and it's an interesting journey, I'm sure, to pursue that as your profession. Shout out to you for being fearless, pursuing what you love.
As we dive into a little bit more, Doug and I talk a lot about upskilling and how do you learn over time for your skill set. And so I'm curious, thinking about your expertise in the last year, how do you improve your savviness and the knowledge around your space?
Honestly, I just open my phone and go on social media because that's how it is. When I first started off, social definitely wasn't what it is now. And I was doing more so YouTube space stuff, Facebook. So it was what we consider mid-form nowadays. I feel like that was the bulk of what it was that I was creating. And as we transitioned more in Instagram space, like even before Reels or Snapchat, which was mid-form, but it was vertical video, I noticed it became easier to know what's going on in the space because as soon as you open your phone, there's something new. An app is telling you that something is new.
And so what is it that you're looking for?
I'm looking for growth, honestly. I'm looking for a place where I could see myself there for a while, but I'm looking for a place where I can grow, meaning I can do more of what I'd like to do rather than what I've pigeonholed myself into doing. I feel like a lot of my career I've been a freelancer, number one, and number two, a freelance editor. And I have a lot of experience in producing. And I feel like within a job, I want that role. I want that title. And I want more experience as a director, as a writer, in the planning and the production aspect of it rather than coming in at post. That's what I look for in my next job position, somewhere I can grow.
Now, can you share two of the most defining chapters of your professional experience? That can be certain roles that you may have had. Maybe it's a part of your educational journey or training, how you got the skills under your belt. What would you say were the two most defining chapters or moments in your career?
This is the toughest question because all of it is very impactful to me. Every job position and the in between, like the points of not being employed, I think are very impactful. I'll say this. When I was working at Refinery 29, I went for an editor role, and after having been a producer, they hired me as a paid intern. So I took a very huge pay cut, but because everyone knew the name of the company and I figured I would be able to grow within the company, I decided to take it. And I will say it was not the greatest job experience, but that made it impactful to me because after that, I knew what I didn't want in the job. I knew it was so transformative in that way.
Yeah.
But another reason why it was transformative is because I connected with the people that I worked with who we were treated around the same, at the same level, same age. And I gained lifelong friends and they helped me to also develop a network within my industry. Maybe you want to call it trauma bonding, but
This resonates with me so much. I talk about how I was laid off as well, but I do believe in that. There is trauma bonding, right? And you always take away something, even in bad moments, whether it's good things or bad things.
Yeah, it's a lesson learned.
For sure.
Yeah. Trauma bonding is really powerful. It's why we're
Right.
sitting here to get together
It's
right
true.
now.
It's
Actually,
true. I
yeah,
know.
it's crazy. So those are some great chapters. Really appreciate you
Sure.
sharing impact.
So, as you're telling your story and you're talking a little bit about your industry and being an editor, when I think about that space and the industry as a whole, especially digital content, and Doug and I talk a lot about AI and how it's disrupting a lot of different industries. So, as an editor, how do you feel about AI and then the work that you can do that maybe AI can't replace?
Right. It's very frustrating. I think for any artist or creator is extremely frustrating. Although I will say, for some creators, I don't know if I would argue artists, it is useful as a tool. For instance, people will go to AI to help them with writing something that may take them a little bit longer if they didn't use AI as a baseline for it. Or even creating graphics if they're not a graphic designer. In some ways, it helps them do it and it helps them to do it quickly and probably cheaper. But it's frustrating because it is missing that soul aspect, the passion that someone has that they put into something, the feeling that they put into something, because I feel like that's what really art is. I think it's frustrating. I think in some ways it's scary.
What are Asia's superpowers, and how did you discover them?
Yeah, I gotta say,
Give me two. Give me your top two.
I,
'Cause-
I'm gonna be like teleportation. No, okay. I will. I think my stuff is vague, but I think like my passion in like brainstorming. A lot of the time, a brainstorm that I'm doing is coming from someone else's idea, and I don't want to take away from someone else's idea or their vision. I want to add to it. But I think when I'm brainstorming, everything is very grand. And I know that sometimes that means things can go a little all over the place, but I think there's an advantage to that in that uh, thinking so grand, we can always just scale down. So I would say that's a superpower. I would also say my connection to people. It's very important to me. It's authentic in storytelling, but a lot of it requires trust with the people that you're working with. When it comes to working on a team with other people who you trust, there's something special. I think the success is in if we enjoyed making it together and if the right people were here.
One, I love that you dropped our hot word, which is storytelling. Doug and I talk so much about that. So you said, I was like, "Ooh, yeah, storytelling." But Asia, we've talked about a lot today in this time. What would be your advice, or how does one get started in a role similar to yours? Or do you have any advice for some of the listeners that might be interested in that same space?
Honestly, I have no advice, but I will just share my own story. I think I got into the industry at such a different time. I feel like not necessarily that it's easier now because it's oversaturated, so I don't think it's actually easier now. But I was so into being formally trained. The way I grew up, low income, small town, I figured, oh, I'll go to college because then I'll be exposed to the things that I need to be exposed to in order to create videos, to be a director, to be a writer. So that's why I went to college. And when you're in film school, you think, oh, I'm going to make films after this. And then you find out, nah. And while I was still in college, I got scared about that. And I decided to go more of the editor and the post route instead of writer director because I figured I could find a job fairly easily. I think I went a very traditional route in doing so. I would say don't hold yourself to some sort of thinking that there's one way to do it. People who put themselves in those boxes, I feel like you end up like me where you pigeonhole yourself into one track of something. You don't have to go the traditional route of getting a formal education. There are so many different ways that you could enter the industry.
So I know we're going to start wrapping up here. What do you want to leave listeners with or anybody watching this with? What do you want them to know about you, Asia?
I feel like when I speak, I'm speaking very personally no matter what I'm talking about. So this feels even deeper. It feels like layers deep. It's important to me to enjoy what it is that I'm doing. It's important to me to have purpose in what I'm doing. And I got to this point. I think I was all about the money before. It's the reason why in college I was like, yeah, let me go an editor route because I know I could get a job right out of college. So I was like, let me stack the money. Let me do all this overtime, working 60 something hours a week Let me not actually experience things in life that can give breath to the stories that I can tell. No, let me just keep working. And I've come to the point where I feel like I'm so jaded within the job space and the workforce and within this industry that I'm like, if I'm going to do it, if I'm going to do this very risky thing, then I need to enjoy it. And I think that's important for everyone. Whatever you're doing, do it with intention, do it with purpose, do it for enjoyment, because then what is the point of doing it otherwise?
What a great way to end.
Thank you so much. That was really powerful and resonates with me. I'm sure a lot of other people out here. So,
thank you.
All right. That wraps up today's episode. Huge shout out and thank you to Asia for joining us. Yay. In the meantime, you all know where to continue along the journey with Job Fair. Check us out, www.thejobfair.com. We're at the Job Fair on all socials. Feel free to suggest, request topics, apply to be on the show, give us any feedback, everything in between. And make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcast.
Yeah. And again, Asia, what a blast. So excited that you were here for season 2, our first guest episode. Do you want to let folks know where they can find you?
Sure. People can find me on Instagram and TikTok at Continent Without a Cause. Like Rebel Without a Cause, but Continent, because my name is Asia. At Continent Without a Cause.
All right. Y'all know where to find Asia. That's a wrap for today's episode. Thank you all for your time. We'll talk to you soon. Peace.
Thanks so much, everyone. Bye.
Bye.